So I noticed they're showing pictures up there, and they had a picture up there of me and my double chins hanging down. Like, why would you do that to me? It's all good. I can laugh at myself. It's okay. Nobody shaming. I accept myself as I am. Uh, anyway, I just want to say good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Washburn Center for Children. Um, this is a three-part series. So this is part 2. They're standalone series, though, so if you missed part 1, don't worry. There's a part 3 available if you want to return. Yes, what do I want to say to kick us off? I would like to say it's been awesome partnering with Cecilia and Melissa on this series. And I would like to welcome our guest speakers. They're in the house at the table to my right. We have Sarah, we have Gabriella, we have Megan, and we have Celicia. If you guys want to give a quick wave to the audience. Thank you and welcome. They'll be the ones navigating and dropping knowledge on us today, so I look forward to that. All right, so I need to do some housekeeping things. 1, location of the restroom. If you go out the doors that you came in, and then to the left, the restrooms are right there. It's my understanding that Wi-Fi, if you need to connect to Wi-Fi, there's instructions on your tables. Do you see Wi-Fi instructions on your tables? Wonderful. We compost at Washburn, so all plates, napkins, plasticware, hot cups and cold cups can be composted, and there's bins in the back. And a mailing list. We have a mailing list. If you want to stay connected to what Washburn is doing or Stanton Adams is doing, please sign up on our mailing list. And the last thing, certificates of attendance. Do we have those, Amy? Yep, they're on some back tables. On your way out, you can grab a certificate of attendance if needed. All right, so we just closed our eyes. Now, if we're able, we're going to do some sit-stand activities, okay? You ready? Uh-oh. Getting ready, pushing chairs back. Okay. Please stand if you believe that your mental health is as important as your physical health. Please stand. All right. My sister girl stood up quick. Okay, so everyone believes mental health is important as physical health. All right. Unanimous. Go ahead and sit down. Well, let me share with you here at Washburn Center, we also believe that a child's mental health is as important as their physical health. All right, here's the next one. Let me see if I can do this. I need everyone to stand except these 3 tables. Everyone else, please stand. All right. Do we think this is about 80% of the people in the room standing? So in 2012, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health, reported that more than 80% of adults with mental illness in Minnesota are unemployed. So that many of you are unemployed. Go ahead and be seated. Did you know that 1 out of 5 Minnesota children will experience mental health challenges, yet only 20% get the help that they need? So 80% of adults are unemployed and 1 in 5 children are experiencing mental health challenges. So what can we assume from that? All right. So please stand if you believe the answer to my next question is yes. Can the stigma of mental health prevent employment? Okay. All right. Well, the short answer is yes. Stigma does prevent people with mental illness from getting a job. People with mental health conditions are typically held responsible and blamed for their behavior and symptoms. Simultaneously, they are perceived as unable to make decisions for themselves. This causes people with mental health conditions to be perceived as unsuitable for the workforce. Have a seat. How's that landing with everyone right now? Okay. So, did you know that mental health disorders are the most common dis-ease of childhood? Of the 74.5 million children in the United States, an estimated 17.1 million have or had a mental health disorder. This is greater than children with cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Half of all mental health disorders occur before the age of 14 and 75% by the age of 24. Yeah. So at Washburn Center for Children, for the children that we are able to serve here, we get to nurture the child and the family's well-being and full potential through transformative mental health care. So I'm sharing all this, and what is my connection to the topic of the talent shortage? The children we serve will be the talent for our future workforce. So I read online that our beliefs and expectations about what an ideal employable candidate looks like may be contributing to what we perceive as the talent shortage. So here's my challenge to each of you. After you leave our session today, take a moment to reimagine possibilities. In terms of talent, think about who may be outside of the scope of our radar and who we may be overlooking. As you reflect, ask yourself, did you hear something in the discussion today that shifted your perspective or generated a new thought that will get you to think about how we perceive and engage talent moving forward? Sounds like a challenge you're willing to accept? Yep. Fantastic. Now I'm going to turn it over to Cecilia.
Stand. Please give them a round of applause. We really appreciate everything that you're doing for us. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you. Thank you. Let's go right here. Okay. So I'm Cecilia Stanton Adams, and I'm the CEO of Stanton Adams Consulting. I've worked on diversity and inclusion for most of my adult life. And I do it because it was my experience growing up. I grew up in New York City to a family who were both immigrants. Both my parents were immigrants from Honduras, and so I was a first-generation American. We also we lived in poverty, right? So we didn't have a lot. And so in New York, you really get to live alongside people from all different classes. So every day I would watch kids from other schools, come in with sporting equipment. And I knew that the Catholic school down the block had a pool inside their school. And, us kids, we always used to be like, we don't know why. We don't know why we don't have that at our school. We didn't understand some of the systemic barriers that were in place. I didn't learn that until much later when I started studying sociology. And I realized that a lot of the stigma that gets placed on people of poverty, people from underrepresented classes, it's because we're living within this system, within this structure that really reinforces this message that we're different, right? That it means something if you're poor, right? That it means something if you're a person of color or an immigrant. At the age of 16, I came out as a lesbian, and so that further marginalized me and distanced me even so from my family, because at least before, I had that connection to my family being Hispanic, right, being poor. But now, as a lesbian, my family didn't understand that. And so I had to find my own community outside of the family structure. And I've done this over and over again in my life where you're having to leave the community from which you've kind of been raised and make it on your own. And that's one of the hardest things to do. And so when you think about those that don't necessarily have equality or access, much of the challenge of being successful is really being out there without a system of support. And so hopefully today and in the next part of the series that we're going to be having together, you're going to continue to think about how do you start to provide that support, whether it's your individual commitment, whether it's the commitment of your organization, or the commitment of your community. So today we're going to take a little bit of a different approach than we did the last time we were together. How many of you were here last time when we did human design? Okay, so we've got some new folks. Good. So last time we did some creative problem solving, and we're going to do that again today. But today we're going to bring up three speakers, or three topics. We actually have 4 speakers. And they're going to help us understand equality and access as it relates to the talent shortage. And we're going to be using 3 different frames from which to understand it. So if you go ahead and hand out our lovely assistant, thank you. These are sheets that you'll have a chance to look at throughout the course of our time together. So if you get me over to, yep. All right. So there's 3 views. And, you know, if you come to any of our classes before, you've heard us talk about the lens with which we see the world. Our lens is based on our own individual experiences, right? But the nice thing about that lens, you know, you can take those lenses off and put other lenses on, right? And try to look at those things from that particular perspective. So I'm going to challenge you to look at equality and access as it relates to talent shortage through 3 lenses. One is the interactions view, right? So when we think about ourselves as individuals, our personal experience of the world, that's the interactionist view, right? When we think about how did poverty impact me, right? How did going to school impact you, right? You think about all the things that's happened in your life, and what you know is your own personal experience. So that's the interactionist lens or perspective. And so when we have Gabriella Klein come up, she's going to tell a little bit about her story and help to illuminate some of the challenges that she's had as an individual and even within her family and community. So as we're listening to that, I want you to think about what are the challenges that you're seeing come up for her and her family as she talks about her story, right? How did she overcome them? Because those are the keys to really thinking about how to really solve some of the bigger issues. So next, we're going to have Celicia Stanton come up. She's also my daughter. The name is very similar to mine, right? So she's going to do a great job, right? Yeah, do mom proud. She's just an amazing young woman, and she blows me away, so I know she'll blow you away as well. She's going to talk about the systems view. So what happens when we look at equality and access from a structural perspective? Because as individuals, we can do small incremental things to make change. But if we really want to make change, right, lasting change, we come together as a group of people, right, as a coalition, and we start to break down systems. But in order to do that, we have to understand what are those systems? What are the places where our structures are broken? And she'll talk a little bit about that when it comes to the debate community. Do we have any folks in here that took debate growing up? Oh, all right. Good. We've got some debate folks in here. And then lastly, we're going to bring up 2 wonderful women. I love working with them so much. And they're pictured here at the bottom, Sarah Hartong and Megan Valen. And they run an organization called Leveled Leader. And they're all about leveling the playing field for every gender. And so they're going to take that worldview and help us to understand trends that are happening in the U.S., and you can even think bigger to the global society, right? What are some of those trends that we're seeing, and why do we need to pay attention to them? They're also going to take you through a process to help you really think about what can you do to play a part in this worldview. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to do a little work today. So to get us started, I want to introduce Amanda Rush. She's our business development coordinator and has been with us for just about a year. Please put your hands together for Amanda Rush.
Hello, good morning. Thank you guys for being here. I feel like I should have prepared an activity now because I feel like everyone before me had an activity. I don't have one, but I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about Gabby. She's going to be our first speaker this morning. She's going to be talking about the interactions view, and I just want to share a couple interactions that I've had with Gabby. So I've been very fortunate to have worked with Gabby. I think, gosh, it was probably like 2013 or 2014, so it's been a while. But Gabby and I got to work together at Mall of America. After that, I transferred to Augsburg, and Gabby was like the person. She was my girl at Augsburg. Seriously, I was there for a semester, and she was like, I know where everything is. I can help you. Do you need help with this class? And she's just a really awesome person. She's a licensed social worker, so she's going to just share a lot of really good stuff with us today. So if you guys could join me in welcoming Gabby.
Hello? Oh, there we go.
Oh, do we have your thing on there?
Yep.
And we are recording, so we just want to make sure that we're talking into the mic. So if you see us kind of working on that,
Yeah, let me know if you can't hear me. I got it. Oh. Perfect. Hello, everybody. So my full name, as you can see it up there, is very long. I was born in Mexico, and I was brought to the United States by my family. So I'm kind of going to go through my story from when I was born until today, and just share with you some of the things that I have experienced, the trauma that I have been through, and everything that kind of my family has to go through to be where we are now. So I want to start by sharing my childhood with you. So I was very cute as a child, if you didn't notice. But I was born in Cuautla, Morelos, which is a little state in Mexico. I was born into a very poor family. It was a decision between buying shoes for school or eating. So very poor, couldn't get much. But we managed. After I was born, my father had to move to the United States because he was not able to find work. So the economy in Mexico, as many of you know, it's very poor. And it has to do a lot with the politics in Mexico and everything that goes through. But my father, as an architect and a mechanical craftsman, was not able to find work. So he had to migrate. My mom is an accountant, a pastry chef, and also a craftsman. So they all have degrees from the University of Mexico, but they're not able to use it in any way, shape, or form here in the United States. We moved to Veracruz from Morelos, which Veracruz is right here. And I will be visiting this August after 12 years, so I'm really excited. But what we encountered during my time during my childhood was that my father was living in the United States even before I was born. So he moved here in 1992, and I was born in 93. So he was not there for my birth. He met me a couple months after I was born, and I only saw my father 4 times during my ages since I was born until I was 11. So there was a lot of difficulty with parenting and all that stuff. I did talk to him every day on the phone, but it's not the same as having a parent figure there. My father was able to visit us a couple of times, and then his visa expired in 2001. And with the whole 9/11 thing, it became very hard for people to go in and out of the country on a visa. And he was also overstaying his stay with a visa because they only give you 6 months. So it was really hard to try and go back and forth. So his visa expired. We weren't able to see him after 2001 until we decided in 2003 that we were gonna try to move to the United States. It didn't actually happen until 2005 because of many reasons. So to be able to apply for a visa, you have to apply for a passport first in Mexico. And because he was still on my brother's and I birth certificate, he had to give permission that we could leave the country with our mother. But he had to do it in front of a judge. And he wasn't there to do that, and he couldn't come back to do it, so we hired an actor. Yeah, he faked his signature, and we got our passports. After that, it was applying for a visa, and that was the hard part for our family, as it is $100 per visa, which might not seem much to you, but it equals about 3,800 pesos for our family, which is a lot of money in Mexico. We had to prove ownership of the house, ownership of the car, bank accounts, that my mom had a job, everything. You had to be settled in Mexico in a good standing economic position for you to be able to apply for a visa. They will not let you apply for a visa unless you can prove that you have those stuff, because they don't want people migrating that are going to overstay their visas. After we applied for visas, we got our appointment. We had to travel to Mexico City because that's the only place where the embassy is. And we had to arrive there at 5 a.m. for a 7 a.m. appointment. We standed outside in the cold, not as cold as Minnesota, but it was cold for me back then. We waited outside the building. And then when we went in at 7 a.m., it was fingerprints, interviews, more fingerprints, more questions. And at that time, like my brothers and I and my mom had to memorize the story that we were coming to the United States because we were going to go to Disneyland. Like, that was our story. We're going to go to Disneyland. We're going to meet with some family down there, and we're going to have a good time. And it was going to be maybe 2 weeks to the max. But in plain sight, we were planning to come into Minnesota, the tundra that it is, and seeing my father for the first time after almost 5 years. So after we went in the embassy, it was just a lot of questions, a lot of things of like, what do you do? How's school going? How are your friends? Who are your aunts? Who are your uncles? How's your grandma doing? Like those type of questions that really get to the point of what your life is in Mexico for you to be able to apply for your visa. After that, they send you to this little window on the wall, and they're like, you turn in all the paperwork that we gave you, you turn in all the money that you brought with you, and at that point, we'll tell you if you've been accepted or denied for a visa. We saw many families turn around and crying because they were denied in front of us. So we were so nervous that that was going to happen to us at that point. But we were accepted, and we got our visas. And it took from 2003 to about early 2005 to actually get all the paperwork that we needed to travel to the United States, and a lot of money. My parents had to go through a lot to be able to get all the paperwork that we needed and to prove everything that we needed to move here. So on December 1st, 2008, we decided to embark on this big adventure and move to Minnesota. We first arrived to Mexico City so we could take a plane from there to Minnesota. It took us the whole day. We arrived at the airport at like 5 a.m. and we arrived in Minnesota at 8 p.m. So it was a long day trip. One of the things that I remember the most during that trip is none of my family spoke English, so it was very hard to get to our second plane. We almost lost it because we could not figure out where we were going. We couldn't ask anybody because they didn't speak English. We couldn't look it up because we didn't have phones back then. So all these things just kind of happened that we were just sitting at the airport and we're just giving up of finding our plane to come to see my dad. until we find this lady, and she's like, oh, you just have to take the train, and it will drop you at the other side of the airport, and then you get on your plane. And we were like, perfect. But then finding the train was another part. And then we had to carry all of our luggage with us. But we finally made it to the plane, which was just very, it was an adventure on its own, just that like hour that it took us to find the second plane. And we made it to Minnesota that night. I saw my father for the first time in about 3 years, almost 3.5. And I can't really explain the emotions that I felt to have my family complete again. At that time, it was such a big moment for our family, for my mom to be with her husband, my brothers to have that parental, again, as a family, a dad as a father figure, and not just over the phone. Sorry, I get very emotional, so if I start crying at points, just don't mind me. So when we arrived to Minnesota, it was on December 1st, 2005, so there was snow on the ground. Mind you, I have never known what snow was, and I was not wearing a jacket, so that was very fun. Because I was like, it can't be that cold. It can't be colder than Mexico City. Like, what are you talking about? But when we arrived to my father's house, which he had bought a couple of years before we arrived, he had nothing because all the money was put into bringing us to the United States. So there were no beds, there were no couches, there wasn't a table, there wasn't dishes to cook with. Like, there was nothing in the house to actually make it a home for us. So for about 2 weeks until we started buying stuff, we slept on the floor. I didn't join school until that January after vacations were done. But to get into school, I had to get like 15 vaccines. So that was very fun. Another struggle that I really had was when we packed. We packed for a 2-week vacation. That's all we were allowed to bring it with us. We brought one suitcase with clothes. I brought a doll and a stuffed animal. Like, that's all I had for my life back in Mexico. Nothing else. All the pictures that you're going to see in this presentation from when I was young, I had to ask my brother to scan them for me from Mexico so I could present. So it was really hard living off of that suitcase until we actually had money to buy more clothes. And then it was like finding my identity again because that was taken from me. I joined school, and one of the biggest issues I encountered in school was learning English. I didn't speak a word of English when I arrived here back in 2005. And it took a lot, but I learned it within 6 to 8 months in school. And I was speaking fluently and reading it at that point. But I always faked it and told them I didn't speak English, and then I would get away with not doing homework. So, yeah. My teachers didn't like it after they found out. And then after middle school, I went to high school. And high school was fine. I didn't have any struggles with high school until about my junior year. I don't know if you guys have heard of AVID, but it's a program that prepares you for college. And I was in that class. And they told me in my junior year, they're like, you're applying for college. We don't care what you say. We don't care what you think. You're going. And it's like, great. I want to go to college. Like, this is going to be an amazing opportunity for me. And then I learned what the word undocumented meant. It meant that I couldn't get FAFSA. I couldn't get loans. I couldn't get many scholarships. So I had to look for ways to get money for my education, because at that time, my parents were not able to provide any money for me to go, and I wasn't able to work because I wasn't documented. So I was accepted to the U of M and many other colleges, and the U of M, they're like, there's this amazing scholarship that we have for undocumented students. It's a full ride for 4 years, and I was like, great, like, I take it. going to the U of M. I was so happy. And then right before graduation from my senior year in high school, they realized that they didn't have enough money for the scholarship that year, so they canceled it. So I lost my full ride to the U of M. I got into Augsburg, and they told me, they're like, we love you. You should come over here. We'll give you free money. And I was like, great. I'll take it. So I went to Augsburg College. Now it's Augsburg University. I don't know how I like the change yet. I'm still getting used to it. From then on, it was, I'm going to college. Life is going great. My brothers are doing good. They're working. My dad is working. My mom is doing great. Her health is good. And then something really bad happened that summer. If this clicks. Or it won't click. My brother was arrested the summer of 2011 in between me switching from high school to college. He was driving without a license, and this is my brother. He's my oldest brother. He was arrested for driving without a license and running a yellow light by Lake Street. The thing in Minnesota is that if you are arrested for any reason from the police and you're brought in, they will call the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office will tell ICE, which is immigration. And then if immigration finds out, then you get your order for deportation. So that's what happened to my brother. For 1 week, we were not sure what was going to happen with him because he was in jail. We had to come up with $10,000 for bail money. And because they knew our address and knew where we lived and knew our life and my whole family were undocumented, we were very afraid that immigration would come and take us too. So it was a week of not leaving the house, not going out for groceries, sleeping on the floor. Everything was turned off. There was no watching TV, no listening to music, because we were so afraid that something was going to happen to our family that we couldn't do anything. We came up with the money by borrowing from people, and we were able to get my brother out and get him a lawyer. And she explained, you guys don't have to be afraid. They can't come after you. And after a week of him being in jail, we got him out. He was released, but then he had court. And it took from 2011, it took to 2013 for him to be deported. During that time, in 2012, I got DACA. I don't know if you guys know what DACA is, but it's something that President Obama passed in 2012 that gives undocumented students a driver's license and a work permit so they can work and go to school and do whatever they need to do. And we were trying to get the lawyer to say that it was okay for him to stay with DACA because I had DACA, and it would mean that he had family in the United States that was legal. But the judge said that because I only had DACA, there was no way that I counted as a family member for him, because we weren't legal in the United States. So that was very hard to hear. On December 11, 2013, we said goodbye to my brother. He went back to Mexico that day. My family got teared apart again after being together for 8 years and enjoying that family. We were not longer able to stay together. My brother had to go back to a country that he had never gone to school in since he was 18. He had to start practicing the language again. He had to start practicing the culture again. The good thing was that we still have our house down in Mexico, so he was able to just move in there and stay with my family that we have down there. My parents' mental health completely went down. Like, it was horrible to see the mental health of my parents so bad. Like I said, my mom is a pastry chef, so she has always cooked. Like, why do you think I'm like this? She has fed me so well throughout the years, and she loves baking. She loves making cakes. She loves making pastries. Everything that you can imagine, you will always find at their house. And at that point, there was nothing. The house was quiet. There were no bakeries on the table. There was nothing in the oven. My dad would go to work and come back, and go to work and come back, and it felt like it was just a big, like there was just a shade within the house that like we couldn't get away from. It just felt like it was so draining to our emotions and to everything that he was gone, and we were torn apart by immigration. But in between the rest and college, the rest in his deportation, I went to college. I was like, yeah, I'm still going to do this. It's going to be great. I did my first year of college, and I owed Augsburg almost $10,000. And then they're like, you can't really come back, so figure out what you're going to do your fall semester of your sophomore year, because we're not allowing you back in school because you owe too much money to us. And until you pay it off, you're not allowed to register for classes. So I had to take a semester off. But at that point, I already had DECA. So I started working at Sea Life at the Mall of America. And then, so I was working, I was doing internships, I was doing everything that I could to graduate. And I did end up graduating with the help of my boyfriend at that time, which is now my husband. He borrowed me the money to go back into school. And by borrow, I mean he gave it to me. So that's the only reason I went back to school. And my junior and senior year, I didn't have to pay anything out of pocket because of all the scholarships I received. I only paid out of pocket for my books. I am loan free and have a 4-year degree. I didn't know that I wanted to get into social work. Social work just kind of happened. They're like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What should I do? And they're like, well, social work, you get a license, you can do so many things, you can help people. And I'm like, helping people sounds great. Like, I want to do that. I want to help people that are in similar situations as I was in my childhood. So I got into social work. I'm still not sure how much I like it, but I know I like it, okay? So I graduated with on 5/2/2015, which is one of the dates that my parents remember the most. I'm the only child that has graduated from a university in the United States. My brother is graduating with his bachelor's degree as a pastry chef in Mexico this summer. And my other brother, he still has no opportunities to go to school because he didn't qualify for DACA, because he got here 2 months after his 16th birthday. So he has no way of getting legal status unless he gets married. So in Mexico 2015, I got to go to Mexico. And I got to visit with my brother after he was deported. I was selected by the Mexican consulate to represent Minnesota in an immigration conference that they had down there for a week. So I spoke in front of people. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's me right there. And I got to share the same story that I'm sharing with you guys now. I got to share coming to the United States, the deportation of my brother, and me being a dreamer for what we call the American dream, which I hate that word, but my dream, the person I want to be. During that week, I visited with family that I hadn't seen in almost 10 years. It was almost 10 years. I got to see my brother again. I think that's what kept my parents going, knowing that I was able to see him, and I was able to bring back a little bit of him with me, with all the gifts he bought them. And just being present in that moment, that I got to hug him and I got to have a conversation with him, and we got to eat dinner together, and we got to hug, and we got to make silly faces and eat whatever we wanted. I ate so much, you guys, it was ridiculous, okay? Mexican food is not the same here as in Mexico. If you ever get the chance, just go, okay? Just walk around the block and be like, oh my God. But that was such a great experience because it got me more interested in sharing my story and telling people what it takes to be an undocumented immigrant. It's not just because we want to migrate. It's because we need to. It's because we have to survive as a family, as a person. Many families do it because they don't have anything to eat. They don't have the money to support their families. It's so much more than just deciding to take off and go to a different country. In 2015, out of nowhere, my husband and I decided to get married. We had a really simple wedding at the courthouse. And this is the only way that I could become a citizen. And I'm still not a citizen. I'm only a resident because it takes a while. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through to some of the steps we had to take. So I already had DACA, which gave me a work permit, a social security number, and a driver's license. Okay? DACA, you need to reapply for it every 2 years, and it's about $600 for the application. You can get it waived sometimes if you can prove well enough that you don't have the money for it. But then the government comes with the excuse like, why do you need a work permit if you're not working? And you're like, oh, yeah. So for DACA, you need to prove that you've been here since day one. So from December 1st of 2005 to I applied in January 2012. I had to prove that I was here. I had to prove with school transcripts, school pictures, every picture that I had of like when I was here, recommendation letters, everything had to be there. My file was about 1,000 pages long, just for DACA. So after that, I applied for it twice, and then I got married, which means I could apply for my green card. For my green card, it was a lot more than $600, that I can tell you. With everything for my green card that we paid for was almost $8,000. We had to pay for lawyer fees. You have to pay for the application. You have to pay for the actual Visa card. Then you have to get pictures on, your husband pictures on. And then he has to sign his life away saying that he's going to be financially responsible for me for the next 10 years. And even if we get divorced, I can't get on any type of MFIP if we have kids or any type of help until 10 years after I become a citizen. Okay? So right now I have my green card. I was granted my green card in 2017. I applied for it in 2016. So it took almost a year for them to actually grant me an interview and then get accepted for it. To apply for the green card, you have to have a medical exam. You have to prove again that your marriage is solid. And how you do that? By proving you own a house together, you own cars, that your bank accounts are together. Everything has to have both of our names on it. You have to have receipts or bills for that full year that it took for me to get approved for my interview. I had to make copies of every bill. The light bill, the gas bill, the Wi-Fi bill, the phone bill, everything to prove that I was living with him for that 1 year. Because if we weren't, our marriage was not approved for me to become a green card holder. Now that I've been approved, it will be 3 years until I can get my citizenship. So in 2020, I can apply for it. Doesn't mean that I'll get granted it. And then I get to take the test and do the whole yada yada. But until then, I can't do anything for my parents. I can't request them as family members because I'm not a citizen. I'm only a resident. And even if I become a citizen, it can take up to 10 to 15 years for them to actually be granted citizenship or any type of outcome to come from that. The other thing is that my brother in Mexico, he can never come back unless he applies for a visa, which they already told him he would never be accepted for one because he was deported from the country. So even if he applies, there is no chance he can come back. And my middle brother, he still has no way to become legal. I can't request him because he's older. He's over 18 when I become a citizen. So there is no way for me to help my family in any sense, which it's one of the biggest fears that I live with every day. In the past year after I received my green card, I have taken ownership of my father's house. I have taken ownership of their bank accounts. I own all the cars that they have. I own everything that was in their name. It's all mine. I'm a rich person. No, I'm not. Because of the fear that if they do get arrested, they will lose it to the state. Because the state will just be like, you're undocumented. Look at all the things you have. They're so pretty. You have nobody to take care of them for you? We will. And they'll take everything away. My father has been paying a mortgage on his house for the past, he bought it in 2003. So for that time, they would just take it away. They wouldn't even be like, oh, like, what you want to do with their house? They'd just be like, okay, well, it's now part of the state. Have a great time. Let's go back to Mexico to nothing. If they deport you, you can't bring anything with you. They won't even allow you to pack a bag. You're deported with what you have on, and that's it. If you're arrested at the time, you just get deported. If you have family or friends that can help you get out of jail after you've been arrested and fight and go to court, that's another story. Like the story of my brother. It took time, but he still had to get deported. So it's different for each instance. But some of the fear that I live with every day is my parents and my brother can be arrested at any point, any time of the day. So it's very scary when I get calls from my brother because we never talk. So when he calls me, I'm just like, what happened? But it's just something that many people live with nowadays. And it's something that we will always live with until we can find something that can help undocumented immigrants. This is my family as we are supposed to be. This was my wedding day, and my older brother was not able to make it, which really broke my heart. But now I'm a resident, and I'm hoping to become a citizen at some point. And I'm helping people, and I'm giving back to the community that gave back to me. And I just wanted to share with you guys my story and let you know what it takes to be an undocumented immigrant and how much trauma and difficulties you have to go through to become a citizen. It's not just like, oh, you just have to fill out a paperwork and you're done. It actually takes a lot of work, and a lot of people don't have what it takes to do it. And many people don't want to get married just to become citizens. It's a really hard decision. So, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys learned something.
Oh, it is. Wow. Thank you again, Gabby, for sharing your story with us, for sharing your experience, your strength, and all the hope that you bring for folks who are undocumented. As we think about what we've just learned from Gabby, I would like to drop a small statistic on you that I read in the Minnesota State Demographer's website. And in the next 5 years, 620,000 baby boomers will exit the workforce due to retirement, leaving us with many vacancies. So when we think about the population that may be considered undocumented, or folks who are reentering our communities from other situations, maybe in incarceration, folks who are people of color who are being overlooked. When we think about our workforce and this talent shortage, at your desk, and I hope you have the handout for that. What is the need? And then what is the challenge when it comes to this talent shortage? And as an individual, what do you think is one solution that we could come up with to work toward ending the talent shortage and closing the gap in the workplace? So I'll give you a couple of minutes at your tables to kind of write down your answers for what is the need, what is the challenge, and what you believe is the solution. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss that a little bit. Responses from the audience?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you ready?
All right, so let's bring it
Let's
back
bring
together.
It back. Wonderful, wonderful. I love the rich discussions that we're having today.
Unfortunately, we will not have time to actually solve this issue. But this is really an opportunity to inspire you to take action beyond our time together, right? So hopefully you're thinking about how do you take some of this back to, again, whether it's your family, your organization, your community. So I'd love to hear some of the discussion. So a couple folks that'd be willing to maybe share what came up for them in their discussions.
Or what came up at your table.
Joel, can I come over to you? All right. This is Joel from Rasmussen College. Here you go.
Thank you. What is the need? More applicants from more diverse backgrounds. Challenges is unconscious biases, getting rid of any preconceived notions, maybe not hire the same people you hired in the past because you always hire that same exact person. Solutions, removing barriers. Anything I missed?
Say it again. Say it again.
Tapping into a diverse population is what we also talked about. Like, how do you reach those diverse pools to have a true representation within your organization?
Yes. Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
And when we heard Gabby's story, she talked about a lot of touch points that she had in her experience of organizations, right? And people. So we have to think about where are those touch points for us because, that's a population that we might want to pursue, that we might want to get to know a little bit more, to support, and possibly even hire for positions.
Oh,
Yes.
We have one over here. I'll take it. Here you go.
So my thought was that from a national level, we need every bit of our current talent, our future talent sources, meaning like immigrants, for example, to be fully engaged and effectively developed. Yeah. And that the challenge is that there's not a shared understanding of the commonality of our needs as a nation. We really all want the same thing, but we have defined the problems, the challenges in ways that are inaccurate, they're incomplete, and then there's a dozen different stories as to what the problem is. We don't have that shared common understanding. And so the solution is that we need to develop that common understanding of a shared future state that's a state of justice.
Yes. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, just to remind you, and you can look again at the sheet that we handed out, we're looking at things from the interactionist perspective, right? And a lot of times we turn on the news and we allow the media, podcasts, Twitter, and all of the media that's out there, we allow those things to kind of tell us the story of what's going on. And sometimes we need to get out and learn those stories on our own, because the stories that we hear in social media are not always representative of the experiences.
I have a great question. From listening to Gabby's story, how many of you learned something about undocumented individuals that you just totally did not know? Wonderful. And I think that shows that Gabby's story needs to be heard, and more stories like that. We need to be able to listen to other folks' story and hear other folks' story when it comes to these types of situations.
Awesome. Well, time to move ahead, but let's give Gabby one more round of applause.
Yes.
It's hard to come up and tell your story, so we really appreciate it. So, here to tee us up for our next speaker is a good friend and colleague of ours, Dante Curtis. He has his own consulting firm, Catch Your Dream, and he puts on many wonderful events here in the Twin Cities. He's very inspirational, and in this short time up here, I'm sure he's going to get you inspired to really be thinking about the issues that the next speaker is going to present for us. Dante Curtis.
Y'all supposed to clap there, right? Oh, okay, great. How y'all doing? So I want y'all to repeat after me. Say I. Say I am valuable. Say I am valuable. The reason I want you to say that is because oftentimes we don't value our stories, right? Part of the work that I do is really about helping people understand value in a different light. And so as I listened to Gabby's story, it really got me thinking about, yes, we know her story, yes, we learned something, but do we actually value her experience? When she starts talking about ownership, half of us, a lot of people don't even know how to own stuff, right? So the fact that she has ownership experience, right? She's dealing with lawyers. I mean, that's experience that we need to value. And so I just want to say thank you, Gabby, for sharing your story, because as I was listening, I was just like, man, like, she has some experience. And besides her college degree, like, that's valuable. Yeah. And so as we talk about talent shortage, I don't think it's necessarily a talent shortage. I think it's a how we look at stuff shortage, right? Because before, let me just give you one personal example right quick, and then I'm actually going to do my job. One thing, right? So, for example, I'm 25 years old. I just turned 25 last Friday, okay? And I've been speaking for 10 years, okay? I've been public speaking for 10 years. Now, what people would tell you is that my experience doesn't start until when? Maybe after college? Maybe when you turn 18? Okay, let's go to college. It's age 22. So if we do that by the dominant narrative, how many years of experience do I have speaking? 3. But that's not true. The truth is, I have 10 years of experience speaking. Does that change your perspective? And so I want you to think about that. How much we undervalue our lives because we don't count the experience that we had when we were 13, 14, 15. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. Right? We need to start talking like this because we're not valuing the experience of people. You got brown and black kids around here mowing lawns. They're entrepreneurs, and we're not selling them that. If you done got a lawnmower and want to go cut some grass, you got a whole bunch of skills, marketing, negotiation, right? Like MBA people studying, paying thousands of dollars for this stuff, and these young 13 and 14 years are making it happen. Anyway, that's all I got for y'all. I just had to share that because I'm passionate about how we think about experience. So anyway, my name is Dante Curtis. I'm the owner of Catch Your Dream Consulting. I go around the country doing workshops around entrepreneurship and all kind of stuff. One thing I was asked to do is there's an event up here that's been scrolling through. I don't know if you want to put that on the screen. You don't have to. There's some flyers out there. I'm a speaker, if you can't tell. And so next Saturday, me and 3 other entrepreneurs of color are holding an event called the Speak It Tour. And this event is in the Twin Cities. It's in St. Paul. And we are looking for people to come out. Tickets are $15. I have some with me. And I think a part of equity, to be real, is to support black businesses. Let me just be real. So if y'all want to come, $15. I'll be out in the lobby after it's over. Come get you a ticket. Great. So Cecilia is a Twin Cities. Celicia is a Twin Cities wedding and portrait photographer with a passion for love, stories, educational activism, and cupcakes, of course. She's a 20-something high school debate coach and co-founder of the Minnesota Debate Institute, a not-for-profit organization committed to equity, access, and social justice. Most days you can find her curled up on her couch, plotting for big adventures, her next big adventures, or listening to her favorite podcast on iTunes. She believes in the power of young people and lifelong education. Mostly, she hopes to never stop dreaming up who she wants to be when she grows up. Please join me in welcoming
Alicia.
Celicia. I'm going to get it right eventually, Celicia. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for that introduction. Gabby's going to be tough to follow. She did a great job sharing her story. But yeah, I'm Celicia, and I'm just going to jump right in because I think you'll learn a little bit more about me as we go through. So this is a picture of me circa 2000. I'm mostly the same, just add some glasses and maybe 18 years. Now, obviously, I've changed quite a bit since then, but the reason I'm showing you this photo isn't just because it's a cute bio photo. But the girl in this picture and I share something else in common, beyond just our name and our undeniable cuteness. 5-year-old Celicia and me, 22-year-old Celicia, are both very aware of our race. The difference is that at 5 years old, this girl is just becoming aware of it. And I remember my first experience of this realization. I was in kindergarten, and there was a day. It really wasn't unlike any other day. I had a friend. I would always play with her, a kindergarten bestie, if you will. And she was out on the playground with some other girls playing on some play equipment. I went out there to join them, and she turned to me, and she goes, "You can't play with us. I don't play with black people." And it was just like in that moment, this illusion had been shattered. And I mean, the illusion really only lasted for 5 years, but to put that in perspective, I became aware of my otherness, of my blackness, before I even realized that Santa Claus didn't exist. And I mean, that is the reality of the world that we live in. The world did not stop reminding me that I was different, even though over time those reminders became a little bit more subtle than I don't play with black people. And the world that we live in is full of systems that are really oppressive, scarily oppressive. And even more scary than that is that oftentimes the people that are victims to that oppression are completely unaware that they're experiencing this oppression. And sometimes they may even help to enable that oppression accidentally. So obviously we need to do something about this, right? Like somebody, SOS, right? We need help. But you know, people have been doing that for a long time. And the reality is that, like I said, this oppression and these systems of oppression are so huge and they're so complex and they're so scary that oftentimes it can feel overwhelming. And so what I find to be more helpful to get away from that feeling of hopelessness is to kind of look at things, look at how these systems manifest in discrete instances. And I say we even have a duty to do this, right? To look at our communities and the systems that we're a part of on a smaller scale to find out who are we leaving out, who's benefiting and who's not. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to zoom into a community that I belong to and see what we find. So we'll start here. Here I am again. This time circa 2009, a little less cute but smarter. So that's important. 2009 was the year that I entered high school. And, you know, before I entered high school and all throughout high school, I was in a lot of activities. Like, I just loved to be in tons of activities. And let's be honest, I'm an only child. I had to do something to get out from under my parents. And so I got this letter in the mail before my freshman year of high school inviting me to join my high school's debate team. And I mean, I read this letter and I thought, I am a pro at arguing with my parents. Yeah, these other 14-year-olds, they're not going to know what hit them. Like, sign me up. So I went in there, and I loved debate. Debate was awesome. And genuinely, and I believe this now still, debate is an incredible activity. I mean, it equips young people with these really cool tools to learn about these really intense real-world and philosophical issues. You become a better speaker, a better researcher, a better writer. But I think, you know, mostly the best skill that kids take away is this ability to think critically, which is a skill that a lot of adults, we find, don't even, you know, haven't even flexed. So at a young age, I felt like I was able to evaluate the world around me through this critical lens. So back to high school. I did debate all 4 years. I went into my senior year of high school, and during my senior year, I qualified to the national debate tournament in Birmingham, Alabama. So I was really excited to go to Birmingham. You can imagine, like, everyone's top travel destination is Birmingham, Alabama. And how this tournament works is that you debate, and it's basically a test of endurance. So you lose 2 rounds and you're out of the tournament. So you're just surviving through the rounds. And I did really well at this. And I was really excited. I felt like this was an awesome, like, culmination of all the hard work that I had put into this activity. And so I made it now to the semifinal round, right? So this is the round before the final round at the national tournament. And the final round is going to be lit. It's going to be on this huge stage in this big auditorium or like theater full of people. It was going to be live streamed so my mom could catch it at home. I wanted to be there. So I just had to get through this one last round. So I walked into the room and I recognized the debater that I'd be debating against. He was a Minnesota debater. He was a male, and he was white. And how the tournament works is that as you go through, they give you more and more judges, right? So that more people are evaluating the round. So at this point, we had 5 judges who would be evaluating our round. They would each render a decision about who they thought won the round, and then whoever basically won the most out of 5 would win the round and move on to that final round. So I stood there about to debate against my white male opponent in Birmingham, Alabama, in front of 5 white male judges, and I felt just like her again. That 5-year-old girl from the beginning. But I was going to give it my all, so I did. I debated hard, and then after the round, the decision came back, and it was a 3-2 decision. That means 3 judges voted one way, 2 judges voted the other way. And unfortunately, I came out on the bottom of that decision. And I'm not going to say definitively that I know that it was because I was a woman or because I am black that I didn't win that round, but I still wonder even now how things might have turned out differently if even one of those judges had been a woman, if even one of those judges had been a person of color, or God forbid, if one of them had been a woman of color. So it was still pretty sweet, though. I won 3rd place, and it's still a really cool trophy, so that was exciting. And life went on. I mean, I graduated high school, and then I got to start coaching debate in the same school district that I attended. So I have my own students now, and that was a whole new, really exciting, and has been a really fun, exciting journey. And so it was in my first year of coaching debate. I was a freshman in college, and I was driving home from a debate tournament, and one of my friends, who was still in high school, he was a senior in high school at the time, his name is Andrew, he turned to me, and we were just complaining about debate camps. So debate camps are a phenomenon in the debate community. Everyone wants to go to one. They're in the summer, and like all these nerdy debate kids get together at like these college dorms, and we just get completely immersed in the activity. And it's, you know, probably about 7 to 14 days. And I mean, if any of you have any kids that you've ever sent to a camp, you can probably guess that they're pretty expensive. Like, these camps are thousands of dollars. Add in if you're going to a camp out of state, and, you know, now we've racked up a pretty nice bill there. So we were complaining that the reality is that the kids that got to go to these camps, they were from backgrounds of privilege. I mean, it wasn't just kids that were poor that couldn't afford to go to these camps. Even middle-class families oftentimes couldn't afford to send these kids, their children to camps. And these camps were giving students a leg up on the competition, right? They were practicing in the summer when we debate during the school year. So Andrew turned to me and he goes, Celicia, we should start our own debate camp. And I kind of laughed at him and I'm like, okay, yeah, like, you're 18, I'm 19, we can't do this. And he's like, no, like, let's do it. And I mean, we're debaters, we're know-it-all. So he's like, we can do this, we got it. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And so that's how the Minnesota Debate Institute was formed, and that was 5 years ago. And so it was amazing. In our first year, we got 14 kids to sign up to, like, risk it all and attend camp with us. And Andrew and I volunteered our time. We still volunteer our time to do this. And it was like we had caught this bug, right? We wanted to get bigger and better. And really, honestly, working with these kids is what was most inspiring. I mean, I say kids, but we were literally at this point from some of these kids a year older than them. Andrew had literally just finished his senior year of high school. And we found inspiration in them. They were brilliant. They had so many cool ideas. They wanted to change the world. And so sort of organically, we began realizing the power in youth. And so in each subsequent year that we did this program, we added on staff members of past, like, MDI, Minnesota Debate Institute attendees. And so last summer of 2017 was our 4th year of running this camp, and we had about 80 kids and 10 staff members. And our 10 staff are super awesome. They were all MDI alums, so all of them had attended MDI as students. And, beyond just teaching them about debate things, we realized we had this ability. We were with these kids for 8 days overnight. They were completely immersed in this community where we could teach them things to change the world. And so we started implementing a social justice curriculum to teach them that they had power, that the things that happened in the world around them mattered. And we saw amazing results from that. So in this year will be our 5th year of running this camp at the University of Minnesota, and we're projected to have over 100 kids and probably close to 15 staff. Thank you. But while I was running this camp, I also was still debate coaching, remember. So I have debate students of my own at the high school that I went to, or the school district that I went to. And in working with those kids, I started to realize just how unfair the system was. Things that I didn't realize myself as a student, I could see happening to them. And then I started to realize that kids that existed at the intersection of multiple marginalities sometimes had it the worst off. So what that means is that obviously we know what one marginalized identity is. If you're a woman, you might experience the world in one way. If you are a person of color, you might experience the world a different way. If you are of a lower socioeconomic status, you might experience the world in a different way. But if we cross over some of those identities, we find that the deck is stacked twice as high. So if you are a woman of color, you now have additional barriers to overcome. And as a woman of color myself, I started to see how unfair the system was to my girl debaters of color. And I felt like when I was in their shoes, there was no one that looked like me. I didn't have coaches or judges that I felt had my back, that could stand up for me. So then I realized that the only people that these girls had to fight for them other than themselves, because they had power, was me. And no one, they didn't assign me this task, but it was a burden that I felt that I had to make it better for them. But the reality is that I used to be a student. I am a little bit removed now. I'm not a student anymore, and maybe I was crazy. Maybe the things I was experiencing, they didn't experience. Maybe the things they're experiencing are different than what I experienced. So I needed to go to the source. I needed to talk to them directly. So that's what I started. That's where I started. And I started meeting with students, particularly students of color, to talk about what barriers they felt like they faced. And what I found was startling, but affirming. Kids spoke to me about coaches who they felt spoke down to them, of feeling rarely acknowledged for their hard work. They spoke of debate rounds where their judges seemed almost too blatantly biased against them. And they spoke of isolation when none of their coaches and judges looked like them. And while this knowledge was horrifying, it felt like coming home. Like it took hearing the same patterns repeated over again by student after student to finally feel like I wasn't crazy. And so now I have this knowledge, and it's time to move forward, which is where my plan for a 2018 Group for Black Women in Debate comes in. I want to create a community for these girls that I never had as a student, a safe place that they can speak up and share to ease those feelings of isolation. But even better, a place for these girls to be able to organize themselves, because, if history has taught us anything, it's that youth have power and that they can change things. And, really, the moral of the story here is that we all have power, and that we all can look at the communities that we belong to, the smaller communities that we belong to, and if we organize together, if we find connections across our differences and work for change together, we can start to get there. Thank you.
So it cost me a lot, people. It cost me a lot. So Celicia brings up a great point, and again, I'm just honored and inspired by Celicia. I became her step parent in 2010, and I feel like I've grown so much as an individual, as a person. Celicia has taught me to be more empathetic, more thoughtful, mindful, kind, and to have a sense of humor. So I do want to say, I want to ask you all a quick question. How do young people impact you? What impact has a young person recently had on you? Right? Take a couple of seconds to talk about that at your tables, and then we'll come back. Okay, let's do some reporting out. I'd love to hear what came up as far as young people inspiring us. All right, let's bring it back, folks. Let's bring it back. I'm going to ask you to clap one time if you can hear me. All right. There we go. I love it. So we had great opportunity to hear from Celicia and Gabrielle, and we talked a little bit about we're talking a little bit about the talent shortage as it pertains to people who may be young, right? So what impact has a young person had on you? Let's start over here. Would you like to help us out, Tom?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom. And the story that came to mind for me was a proud papa moment of my older daughter, Maeve, has been real dreamy artist, reader, introvert type. And she started high school this year and came home one day and said, "Dad, I want to do mock trial." And it is the last thing I ever would have expected her to do. So I was really moved by Celicia's story because it felt so similar to what I saw, this kind of awakening and transformation I saw her go through this year, where all of a sudden she's at the Ramsey County Courthouse in her pumps and her business suit, grilling witnesses, and it was so inspiring and moving as a dad. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. Let me get one more. Give me another inspiring or an impact that a young person has had on you. Oh, all right. Let's come on over here. I'll get you next, okay?
Hi, my name is Jen, and I would say I have a 9-year-old in my life who inspires me with his curiosity every day. I mean, he just this morning asked me, he knew that I was coming here, and he's like, "Well, what motivates you? What inspires you?" And it was just so sweet, and the questions that he asks, I take to heart, and I think it's awesome that he continue, and I want to inspire him to continue to ask them.
I wanted to share a story. My wife works for Hopkins High School District, and there's a 17-year-old in the district in her high school that's making a big difference in our state around sex trafficking. And she just will not be denied. And I can tell you, as someone who, I don't know her, but to watch her be a part of something that is so inspiring. I mean, she's got friends at the state level. She's lobbying. She's out there creating really a path forward. And so anyway, she is, we're going to hear more about her, and you'll hear more about her. She's making a big difference, not only in the high school, but she will not back down. And I tell you, for someone, especially a woman at 17, part of an immigrant family, it would be easy for her to say, "My voice doesn't matter." And she's coming forward in a big way and around sexual discrimination in the high school and around sex trafficking at that level. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much. How about one more? Time for one more? Oh, wonderful. One more.
My name's Carrie, and when you said that we will not be denied, it made me think, I have a college-age daughter, and what I was thinking is that group, in that age, and her friends, they're saying, we will not be defined. Like, we will define ourselves and our identity in a way that I did not grow up with, and it's so inspiring to see them saying, like, this is me, and I'm going to tell you who I am and what I can do.
I think that's very important information when we think about recruitment, talent, trying to find talent for our organizations, right? Oftentimes we want to bring folks in, and we need to create inclusive workplaces, not just for the racial equity, but the diversity of generational differences that we all bring to the table. And again, remember, 620 in 5 years, 620,000 baby boomers in Minnesota are going to retire. There are a host of folks out there that we can think of hiring. And diversity is not just about race. Diversity is about this broad group of ideas and identities and cultures that culminate to make us who we are, this intersectionality of who we are. So I'll get off my soapbox now and I'll say, please take a break. We're going to take, what, a 5 or a 10? A 10-minute break. Come back because then we're going to hear from level leaders. And this is a great presentation. You don't want to miss it. Folks, let's bring it back. We are ready to get started, so if you can make your way to your seat. Thank you so much. I appreciate the energy in this room today. I really feel like we're going to make some positive changes in the right direction on an individual level, on an organizational level, and as a group today. I'm going to pass the mic to my better half, Cecilia Stanton, and she is going to kick us off for the next part of our training.
All right, and you can give that one to Gabby, and I'll give this one to Celicia. They're going to actually do the introduction. But I want to talk to you a little bit about Level Leader, the company. It's an organization based here in the Twin Cities, and these women do wonderful, wonderful work. They come into your organization, and they really help they help you to start having those important conversations so that you can move your good intent to action. They do some amazing services, executive coaching. And, you know, executive coaching, we think, oh, you have to be at a very high level, you have to be a VP or something. Anyone can get coaching. Coaching is just about working alongside someone to really understand, you know, what are some of the things that are standing in your way, right? So those of you who are thinking about career progression and are really struggling with the unwritten rules and figuring out how to level up, they're the people to call. They also do some great workshops. So if your organization is looking at just dip the toe in the water, they've got some really interesting ones. And I pulled it up here so you can hear some of the titles. Amplifying Your Voice, Leading with Confidence and Influence. I mean, that's just good for everybody, right? Executive Presence, How to Own Your Own Space in the Meeting Room and Beyond. Build Your Board of Directors. Leveraging outside expertise for your personal growth. And I love this one, Leadership Narrative, Telling Your Story. So they do really great workshops that are great for women, but really it's great for everyone. So I'm going to turn the mic over now to Celicia and Gabby, who are going to introduce Sarah and Megan.
Hello again. So Sarah is a communication expert with a passion for collecting, telling, encouraging, and articulating stories, particularly those of women and those that exist to drive change in today's workplace. As an advisor, coach, and communication expert for nearly 2 decades, she trains and consults leaders, from Fortune 50 C-suite executives to early-stage startup visionaries, with the aim of putting the human in today's leadership. She serves as a trusted advisor on leadership brand, executive presence, career strategy, and driving a supportive, successful business culture. Most recently, her focus has been on next generation and female executive, facilitating top talent females retreats and working with leadership teams to take real action on balancing gender in the workplace.
And the other half of the dynamic duo is Megan. Megan has over 15 years of experience in media and leadership communications. She is a lover of transitions, pivots, and reinventions because she believes and has experienced firsthand that a straight and narrow career path is a thing of the past. As a coach and facilitator, she excels at helping leaders, notably female leaders, define, understand, and better articulate their own personal and professional narratives. She has a long-held passion for telling the stories of others, having honed her expertise working as a television producer and casting director for over a decade in New York City. She's also a seasoned project manager, an insatiable wordsmith, and a fervent curator of talent. All skills she uses to craft client events and collateral that are noteworthy, thought-provoking, and drive action. Let's give him a round of applause.
Ooh, I have a little gap in my shirt. If someone could just give me a little tug if my microphone pulls too far. I'm Sarah, thank you. That was really fun. We usually don't get such grand introductions when we do our workshops. But it's really good to be here with you all. We absolutely love this group of women who are driving change and bringing more diversity to the world that we all operate in. So thank you, Melissa, Celicia, Cecilia, you're amazing. You're amazing. So we are thrilled to be here today. Megan and I do focus on issues of gender in the workplace, and this is all genders. It is balancing genders in the workplace. We come from the corporate sphere, and we realized at some point that we could influence from the outside better than from the inside. So we put together a company that is attempting to help other companies figure out the thorny issues of gender balance. And this does go both ways, although, of course, usually when we think about it, we think about getting more women into the workplace and keeping them in the workplace. But it does go both ways. There are some industries that are predominantly women, and gender diversity overall is a good thing. And we mean men, women, non-binary, gender fluid, all of it. So that's what we do. One of our favorite guiding principles is when are there going to be enough women on the Supreme Court? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just an amazing human being, but one of our favorite quotes is she was asked, when are there going to be enough women on the Supreme Court? And she said, when there are 9. Really proving the point that why is that weird? There have been 9 men on the Supreme Court. There have been 9 white men on the Supreme Court. Why is it strange to say there should be 9 women or 9 people of color? Why does it sound weird? When we were talking, just that question that Melissa asked earlier, what do young people do to inspire you? When I was leaving my office, my home this morning, which, by the way, anyone who can see my feet, my beautiful blue, thick-heeled shoes are sitting in my entryway of the house that I live in, so I'm very Minnesotan today in my muck boots. But that's not the point. When I was leaving, I have 3 daughters, and when I was leaving today, my 6-year-old said something, 6-year-old-ish, why do you have to go to work? What are you going to go do today? And I said, I am going to do my work so that you think my work is antiquated by the time you get to my age. Right? Let's make women's leadership conferences and multicultural conferences into just leadership conferences someday. Right? Okay. So what Megan and I are believers in and what we work to do every day is to put action to good intent. You will rarely find leaders who say, no, I don't want to do anything with diversity. There are some. But usually they talk a big game. It's in the strategy. It's somewhere in this existing, and probably many of you can point to your diversity initiatives and strategy, and it's hard to actually do it. Right? So why? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to give you some new ways to think about driving action when you go back to your desks and your corporations and your organizations. Okay, so talent shortage. When we talk about a talent shortage, and we think about 50% of the population, there's something here that doesn't add up. It makes no sense that there should be a gender talent shortage. So what's going on here? This there's a couple of studies out there that we love. We're study geeks. We read all the research. I'm going to be using a couple of them today to prove some points. This is from Boston Consulting Group. They did the study in June of last year. And this particular graph from it shows what the workforce looks like. It's the percentage of women at companies that decline with seniority. So we go from university graduates all the way to CEOs and board members. No shock. Is anyone surprised by this? And is anyone surprised if I tell you when we plot other types of diversity issues, culture, socioeconomic, that it looks like this, if not worse? Right? Not surprising. But why does it matter? So we all in this room probably think it matters because it's the right thing to do. And that's correct. It's the right thing to do. Not everyone sees through that lens quite as brightly as maybe those of us in this room do, so we got to build a business case. And it exists and it is out there. Just one little snippet of the business case. There's another study, it just came out January this year, McKinsey & Co. did it. It's called Delivering Through Diversity. This is a very confusing chart, and every time I stare at it, my head sort of spins. But the point here is the top, on the bottom you see it says top and bottom. Those are quartiles. So the top 25% of companies that have a gender diverse workforce versus the bottom 25 who have a less diverse gender, this is looking at gender, less gender diverse organization. 21% more likely to outperform industry averages with a diverse gender organization. They're just two different touch points. One is economic profits, one is EBITDA. They're just ways to measure businesses' success. Not surprisingly, if we broaden that lens even further and look at diversity from a much broader lens and we start to include things like race and culture, that gap widens. 35% more likely to outpace industry averages when you have a diverse executive team, for example. The stats are there. It's all there. The business case is there. Most CEOs you know could probably quote something along these lines, if not exact. They know what's happening. So why is this so hard? Why is it not happening? Let's talk about senior roles. And by senior roles, I mean, sort of mid-level and above. It doesn't have to be a C-suite. What are some reasons why you think it's not happening? Why isn't there more gender diversity? Yeah. Unconscious bias. Good old boy network. Status quo. GOB network. I've never seen it abbreviated that way. We all have a new term. The GOB network. Lack of mentors.
Organizations may be unaware of the systems in their organizational structure that are preventing the access.
Absolutely. So systemic issues. Comfort with things that look like us. Fear. Fear of things that don't look like us. Say it again. Bias interpretation of what talent is, like Dante was talking about, that your experience is only 3 years, it's not 10 years. Or you took 7 years out to be home with your children. That's not experience. Has anyone heard 3 children? Do you know what kind of experience that gets you? The efficiency, the productivity, that's another workshop. You can go to our blog to read about that one. Okay. Why else? Yeah.
I think there might be some discrimination for women that do have children because women tend to be the primary caregiver.
Yes, absolutely. Culture of the organization. American culture. Yep. What makes it, let me ask the question too in a slightly different way. And this goes back to a table activity we did earlier, what are the barriers? Why aren't more women getting in the door, so to speak, or stay, or where do you see the barriers? Does that question make sense? Does it frame it any differently? Yeah. Lack of a flexible work schedule.
The double standard for a woman, she's bossy, for a man, he's a leader.
Bossy and leader. Daughters, anyone? Tell them they got great leadership qualities, right? When they're being a little difficult. That's fine. You may get there, you get in the door, you get hired. I had an old somebody I used to work with who was a relatively enlightened human being say to me, all you need to do is get one woman in the meeting. where to start. But it's that, it's that mentality. If you get one woman in the room, how is that woman going to be treated when she's in the room? Is she going to be listened to? Does she have a voice? Is she perceived through all these different lenses? Absolutely. So who are you looking to that looks like you? When we saw that chart on the previous page, if we're talking about 9% of women of boards of directors, 9%, there's not a lot of people that look like you. And do you think that's a racially diverse 9%? Hello, can you stand up and say that louder? Yes, yes. The Me Too movement, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, as a coach, this is Megan and I's single biggest pet peeve. Ladies in the room, if you see a job posting and you're like, I don't really qualify, there's about half of that I can check the box on, apply. It's amazing. Every woman we work with has this thing where I'm not qualified for that job. Just apply, and it will be a waste of someone's time to read my resume. Just apply and make others apply. Okay, so isn't it amazing how you all probably have a whole bunch of other things rattling around in your head? This list is long. So let's get a little tactical here. There's something really interesting that happens when you ask sort of men and women same questions. And by the way, one thing we do struggle with is when you look at the data, they separate into two groups, men and women. So just bear with us on that. Someday they will do better studies that remove some of those boundaries, because we know those boundaries aren't as hard and fast as the studies want to believe. So this shows men and women ranked obstacles to gender diversity. They were asked the question about what obstacles there are to gender diversity. And we have recruitment, culture, leadership, retention, advancement. And something really interesting happens, and it's very enlightening. It's very telling to me. Men and women, men more than any of the other ones, say recruitment is the issue. We can't find good women. Did anyone see, I'm assuming a lot of you did, Beyonce's Coachella performance? So we were having this conversation, and somebody said, think about when you look at Beyonce's stage and what happens on the stage, and then you hear somebody say, well, I can't find any women of color. I mean, come on. Where are you looking? Where are you looking? Right? So, yes, recruitment is an issue, but when you ask women this question, they say, you know what's hard? Sure, getting in the door. Yeah, okay, that's a thing, getting in the door. But you know what's really hard? The culture of the company. That's hard. The leadership doesn't look like me. It's not supportive of what I do. It doesn't offer me the flexible work schedule. Retention. It's really hard to keep women when life changes. Life changes. Work doesn't. And then advancement. Look at this big gap. 2.1 times. 45% of women said advancement is the hardest thing for gender diversity inside of companies, where men said 21%. There's no wrong or right here, to be clear, too. It's not that anyone is being devious. It's not that men don't have good intent. It's a knowledge gap. It's an understanding gap, and it's an empathy gap. Yeah, please.
Can you go back to leadership and just unpack that a little bit?
Yes, what the leadership piece means. So 33% or 18% of men, 33% of women say a challenge to gender diversity is that leadership isn't supportive of gender diversity, it's not a priority, and tucked in there a little bit in the question too is leadership doesn't look like me. So it's a little bit of all that. Okay, so it can get overwhelming and it can get exhausting. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but because all of you gave us a lot of answers. Anything else why gender balance and inclusion is hard? Why is it hard? Why is it not changing faster? Why, when we know these things and when this data exists, why is it hard? We have a lot of really good stuff up here. Is there any other thing that you can think of? Giving up power. It's about power. So we had this amazing opportunity to do an event with Gloria Steinem. I just like to name drop Gloria Steinem. A little while ago, and someone asked a similar question to this. They said, you know, the way it was framed was, if you were still running Miss Magazine, and this was right around when Me Too was really gaining steam, if you still ran Miss Magazine, what would the next cover be? And she said, it would scream, it's about power, right? It's about power. Why else is it hard?
Just because you offer a woman or put a woman in a position, she may not be comfortable there because of the dynamics.
Totally. Look what I did. I promoted a woman. She'll be fine. Fine. She doesn't need any support, any training, none of that. Yeah.
I think within gender there's race.
Yes.
Racism within gender.
Yes.
So once you tap out of the white women, you're not going to go to women of color.
Yes. It's so true. There's like this stack ranking in a lot of people's minds, and it's just unbelievable barriers. Like, was it Celicia that was talking about this? The intersectionality. No, Melissa was, right? This idea that, and this is actually going back to that chart too about when companies are more likely to go beyond their peers. Industry averages 21% gender diverse, 35% when you consider all diversity. 21%, a diverse executive team is not half white men and half white women. There's no diversity of thinking there. Well, maybe some. Not a lot. Why else? Yeah.
So there's a study that showed that when men get mentored, or when women get mentored, they get mentored around the soft skills, developing the soft skills. But when they mentor men, they focus on the business and teaching them financial acumen and strategy. And so when those two people go into an interview, one is able to speak to the business, and one may not have the language or maybe the knowledge even.
I want that study. I haven't read it, and I do not doubt it for a second. Okay. Oh, yeah, one more, please.
And maybe this is the wrong word, but the halo effect, right? So I already think something about you before you get here. So when you are here, I have all these biases running through my head about you, say the white man versus interviewing the black woman or the woman of color. So I think that can definitely be a barrier as well.
So this, like, the preconceived notions, what you already bring to the table? Absolutely. Oh, God, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, please.
Just that society has kind of, through socialization, as we are raised as children, we're kind of given this idea of where women sit in the world and where men sit in the world. Girls shouldn't do this and boys shouldn't do that. And that kind of travels with us as we grow up and become adults, and we kind of see the world through that perspective. That, well, maybe this woman wouldn't make a good executive in an engineering company, right? Maybe this male wouldn't make a good nurse. So we have these ideas about where people should, what type of roles men and women should be playing in society.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that point, because there's also this, there's a lot of studies out now about the internalized patriarchy, some of it internalized. It's fascinating stuff that it's particularly, a lot of the studies are around white women and how they in particular have these ideas of what these roles are, which is what is advancing the patriarchy, because that's what they believe. White women were raised to believe that they are to be home with or whatever. I mean, all races are, but it's interesting. Okay, let's see. We had a list too. Let's see if, okay. There's a couple that we have that maybe weren't mentioned. A lot of them were. Can you all see this? It's a little bright. Yeah, it's okay. Dollars. Cost money. Cost money to train women, to give them the support, to hire them. Money that would go somewhere else, to marketing. It's a hard conversation, which ties, someone had mentioned fear, which we also have up here. This really interesting arc has happened to our work with the Me Too movement, which is fantastic. But Me Too is kind of like 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, because now people are terrified. They think it's a witch hunt. They think if they open the can of worms that is gender diversity, all of a sudden someone's going to get the finger pointed at them and a lawsuit's going to ensue. It's really interesting. We could talk for hours about that. Accountability. Whose job is it? Another study just came out 2 days ago. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it was really interesting. It was saying a dramatic jump has happened with CEOs saying diversity and inclusion is a top priority at the absolute top level. Everyone sort of always had it as their sub-bullets, right? But it's getting there. It's getting higher and higher as a top priority as a company. Bottom up, a lot of people want the change to happen from the bottom, or I shouldn't say want. A lot of the change is trying to be made from the bottom. A lot of people are trying to fight this fight, but until the leadership gets on board, nothing's going to change. One size fits all. This is, I loved that picture of the boxes. This is often, oh, we can solve the gender problem, right? One size fits all. Women should fix it. We have so many people come to us. We just had someone the other day who called us who's at a startup. It's a very, it's actually doing a pretty good job with racial diversity, but not very good with gender diversity. And we got a call, and this woman's like, well, I'm new, and I'd love to talk to you because the CEO just called me in because he wants me to help with some women, getting more women in. And we sort of, oh, okay, why did he pick you? And she was like, well, because I'm one of the only women. I mean, really? Do we have to rely? What, not all women know issues around gender diversity. Not all men know not all men know sports. I mean, it's just sort of this ridiculous mindset that comes in with these preconceived notions. Women of color being underserved, big problem. A lot of gender advancement, gender diversity initiatives don't do a great job at women of color. And a lot of these other ones you hit on. The one we want to spend the remainder of our time on today is the last one. Clarity and focus. We see time and time again that so many companies, again, have this good intent, have things written down, have all these plans, but it's either too broad and they can't focus, or it's not very clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to do all of it. Clarity and focus. We got to start somewhere. And we can't cure all the problems. This is actually, personally, I'm doing a year of focus. I'm sure many of you have had this experience too. The last couple of years, we all see the world's problems a lot more clearly. Hooray. We all want to solve all the problems. We can't solve all the problems. Our energy can only go so far. So it's about clarity and focus. It's about picking a thing, being really clear on what your intention is, and getting something done. So our clarity and focus is gender balance. All right. See you. Little exercise. At your tables. Yeah, I put little, the word is escaping me. They're made by 3M. Post-its, thank you. Post-its on everyone's table. If everyone could grab a couple of pieces, and I want you to write down a moment in your career when you struggled. And then I want you to write down a moment when you have witnessed a woman or non-binary person struggling. Now, just to give you some examples, one of my big career struggles, I was 29 years old. I was being offered a partnership in a management consulting firm, a small boutique in New York. I loved my job, but it meant committing to a lifetime of travel every week. Every week. And I knew I wanted to have kids someday. I knew I wanted to not travel every week. That was a really pivotal moment for me. The other two are Meg's. Meg's had a few. Do you want to say anything about those two, what your moments were?
embark on a similar challenge, but in a different way. And then promotion to management, going from a position where I was an individual contributor to managing a team. That was a struggle for me, and I didn't feel like I got the support I needed to understand the skills and things I needed to develop.
Okay. All right, so everyone take a couple minutes. A time in your career when you struggle. Yeah, do it on the Post-its, please. Looks like most people are done right. Still some people jotting. Take another minute. You know what I'm realizing? I didn't say write them on separate Post-its. Practice your handwriting. Scribble out the bottom half and write it on a separate Post-it if you didn't. Devil's in the details. Anyone want to share one of theirs? Either your own or what you've witnessed? Yeah, please.
My mother has been let go from multiple positions. She works as an electrical engineer, and she's been in leadership positions. But because she's both a woman and has an Eastern European accent, she has had lots of complaints from clients going over her head saying, we don't like working with her, we can't understand her. And then instead of siding with her, the company has let her go.
I don't know if y'all heard that. Well, blood's boiling. Her mother is an electrical engineer and has been in leadership positions, but has been let go more than once, largely because of complaints that they don't want to work with her because she has a heavy accent. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Sharita, let me give you the mic.
Oh, thank you.
Give you certain tasks or don't give you enough tasks because they don't think that you can do them or do them the correct way.
So not not being offered, your value not being used correctly. Giving the sort of menial task or task that you're not, whatever it is, but not being valued for what you're great at or what you could be great at.
One right here.
Yep.
Being put into a position as the only woman of color in a role by a senior leadership team of all white women to go out to community-based organizations that we needed to work with who were headed by people of color. And so it's like, you're the CEO. You go meet with the executive director of said company because everyone knows I have to come back and ask mom for the cookie out of the cookie jar, right?
So it's a version of tokenism. Right? And it's that same idea that women should fix it. Women of color should fix it.
The example for the second one that comes to mind is a colleague who was a single parent struggling to fulfill her child care responsibilities in the morning in particular with the time that she was supposed to start work and did not feel that she could or did not feel empowered to ask for help to even tell anybody about the conflict, which when it became clear what the issue was fairly easy to accommodate with just a slight adjustment in who took care of what responsibilities. But I think there was a huge amount of fear to even raise the issue and to try to get it addressed.
Great. So fear of raising an issue, a personal issue having to do, in this case, with childcare, because you weren't sure how it was going to be perceived or reacted to. So this is just an interesting corollary, is that when you think about it, when women, especially in corporate, in bigger companies, when they become pregnant, it's a wonderful thing. And the fear that women have to go in and tell their boss that they're pregnant is extraordinary. Okay, more.
One more.
For myself, the challenge has been not that long ago. I had a conversation with the president. It was a challenging conversation with the president of our company, who was not in support of processes to increase minority participation in business. As a result, though, I talked to him again, and he was, and I wanted him to know, I'm not trying to be insubordinate to you, but I need to stand on this principle. He said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I'll debate anytime, anywhere with anyone. So it was no problem. He didn't speak to me for three days. When he came back to speak to me, he acted like everything was okay. By the second day of him coming back to speak to me, he let me know that my raise had been deducted by $2,000, but you're still getting X amount, so you should be fine. The raise I haven't seen yet, but just so you know.
You said that in such a measured way. Your paycheck getting deducted for raising issues. Okay. Show of hands, and this is a harder question to answer. When you look at your issues that you wrote down, how many are gender specific? How many are career? Okay, so look around. We got about an 80% there. Many issues that women face are also issues that men face. The support structure is just built very differently for how you get through those. They're the same issues. They're just built differently. So how do we impact change? Okay, now we want you to do one more thing with your Post-its, which is why you wrote them on 2. In our arts and crafts are over here on the wall. We've got less than 5, less than 10, less than 20, and then plus. These are a timeline, a career timeline. What we want you to do is everyone just get up. We're going to take about 5 minutes. Don't get up yet. Take your Post-its and stick them if you can. It's not always a nice and neat exercise. Stick them where you can on where in the career trajectory this happened, either your own thing or the thing that you witnessed. Was it when you were very new, maybe just entering the workforce, less than 5 years? Was it somewhere a little later? Where around the career trajectory did these challenges approximately happen? Does that make sense? Okay, go for it. Career versus current. For this one, where you're going to stick it, I would say whatever makes sense to you when you think about where it is. So, like career, I would say career, right? So if you like made a career change, you could back it up. But if it's the same, if it's the same career, I would do the whole career. I would look at it holistically. Oops, sorry, go ahead. My boots? Thank you. I should start just doing it on purpose. Oh, thanks. All right. Okay, everyone can glance over there and see. Take a look. Just remember, hold on, going back. Anyone see anything? Chances are, if we did truly have gender equality in the workplace, it wouldn't look like that. It would be the same number of stickies. Now, I mean, of course, age skews things a little bit, right? There's no perfect science here, but it would look a little differently. The reason why there's not a lot of 25 plus is that there are fewer women who have these 25 plus careers in places where they continue to advance, where the challenges continue to be real. They stagnate, so the challenges are sort of the same. They're not the challenges that necessarily are identified as the hot spots. Also, another note is when looking at this, you know, if we, with the exception of Dante, who started his career when he was 9, most of us do start somewhere around 20-ish, right? If you were doing the math, you probably sort of did the math from 20-ish, 22-ish. If you look at what happens 5 to 10 years to women, we're looking at 32, low 30s. What tends to happen? Babies, right? So that sort of impacts this as well. All right, let me get back to my slide now. All right, so here's the question. When you look at the challenges that you stuck up here, or the next question I should say, what would have helped? Maybe you got the support that you needed. Maybe when you wrote down that challenge, you thought, oh, I remember that challenge and I got through it. What would have helped? Yeah.
For me, I got what I needed, but I was terrified to ask.
Aha. Did you ask or was it given?
I asked.
You asked.
But it was one of the scariest conversations I'd ever had.
Huh. Did anyone help you plan that conversation? Nope. So what might have helped, somebody to talk you through how to have that conversation. Yes. Okay? Yeah.
I'd have to say the same thing. I was going to be a secondary principal in a district that never had a female in a high school before. And I had a pay raise, and I thought it was great. There's like $45,000 less than the guy I replaced. And I didn't even know that. I didn't have that information. I mean, this is a long time ago, but it would have helped if I would have had the education, even knowing who to ask and how to ask that. It just wasn't there.
How did you find it out eventually?
When I went to arm wrestle with the superintendent and then started asking different questions. And so when it came out, it was like, wow, I had no idea.
I had a literal vision of you arm wrestling. Which
I felt often that I needed to come there acting more male, which was very interesting.
that wasn't one of our things up there.
Right, and then
Yeah.
that became that I was a bitch instead of a
Yep.
leader. So,
I mean, 80s shoulder pads, right? Yeah, please.
Goes back to something that Celestia said. It would have helped to know that I wasn't crazy.
Ah.
Because you still have to perform the duties of your job and navigate through all of that stuff thinking that you're insane.
Oh, that's a great one. Like, oh, it's just in my head. This isn't real. It's a great one. Transparency. Yeah.
Sometimes the oppressed can oppress, and so I think sometimes our barrier are other women, managers and
Yes.
supervisors, and especially those in HR. HR is filled with women, and I've seen where they are sometimes the problem for other women.
Yeah.
As far as like, negotiating their salary or understanding their union plans or whatever the case may be. And so I think what would help is women being empowered, knowing that they can also perpetuate some of these issues.
Great.
It's huge because I think sometimes we blame men.
Yeah.
But we're also doing it.
Yes. Megan and I do a lot of work in the law profession. Any lawyers here? No way! I was about to say it's a particular challenge in the law profession, but I don't have to say that, I guess. That's amazing. Okay, Dante.
Yeah, something I'm finding is that like so right now I work in my boss is a male, is a female, my supervisor is a female, and I'm finding that like sometimes we really have this lens of feminism, which is real, but like I'm 25, so I'm dealing with like ageism, like even though I'm a male, like I'm like you know what I mean, and so kind of talking through that has been challenging. I was up last night talking about this because there's some stuff happening. We're just like, yes, like I'm a black man, and like these are indigenous women and males and females, but like, how do we have that conversation? Like I'm still young. There's also oppression that comes with me being
Mm-hmm.
And being oblivious. Like there's just, there's generational oppression. Like there's a lot happening. So.
Yes, there is putting people in boxes, right? You've got some boxes you're in. You're 25. You're black male. Right? We're all in these boxes. Why do those lines exist? And having the conversation past those boxes is hard for some people, or into other boxes. What else would have helped? Anything else? Yeah?
Being believed that the reason for you're being let go could be something like your race or your accent or your gender, because it's amazing how, for my mom, when she was going to networking events to try to explain stuff, everyone's like, well, you must have done something wrong to be let go. And then for me, being her daughter, being in high school and telling my friends, all my friends of color believed me when I was like, yeah, they're going to go because of an accent. But my white friends were like, maybe she just doesn't know how to do her job. So it's like, not do you only have adults not believing you, but even like it's so pervasive as even kids won't believe you.
Yes, and this is tied to what you were saying, this idea of it's real. It's not just in my head. It's a real thing, right? It's this, I'm sure many of you have read many of the articles about this horrific outcome of the term colorblind, right? It's that same idea. It didn't happen to me, and I'm colorblind. So it can't be happening to you. Anything else? Yeah.
If 20 years ago, my husband would have felt like he could have asked for more flexibility in his job. Where he was, the women were asking for flexibility, and he felt like he couldn't do that. He had to stay on his career path.
Mm-hmm.
So then there was less flexibility in our family as far as doing other responsibilities. So
Absolutely.
15 years later, he was in a place, and I think society is changing very slowly, where he could get some more flexibility. But at that point,
No, yes. This dual caregiver is a really big deal. And it's even when you look at the companies that on paper are doing great jobs at this, a lot of the tech companies, they just say primary caregiver, and the primary caregiver gets X number of months off, and a lot of that is really good, 6 months off. And you have the choice. It can be either caregiver, male, female, non-binary. It can be primary caregiver. But when you actually look at who's taking advantage of it, even though it's on paper, the culture of that company or what's happening outside of that company, it's still the women who are opting in. For a lot of different reasons. But there is this assumption that it's called maternity leave. Right? Legit, because our bodies go through some things. We need a break. but there's more than one caregiver, often, not always. Okay, so now let's bump it up. We're going to bump it up and think about the organizational level. Okay, so we know we can't think one size fits all. We've learned so far that a lot of our problems cross gender, races, they're career problems, but they are affecting disproportionately underserved communities. They're affecting disproportionately women. So what can companies do that are paying this great lip service that they want to drive change? What can they do? What are some things that work? Could I ask you to, I'm going to skip this, pass out this. So I know it's tiny, so we have this printed. This is another really interesting finding from the study Getting the Most of Your Diversity Dollars. And when you see it on paper, what it is the effectiveness of certain initiatives at companies rated by male senior leaders and female senior leaders. So it's all the kinds of initiatives that some of your organizations probably do. Most of them you've probably heard of, things like mentoring women, holding one-time training sessions, tracking performance through meaningful business metrics, not just soft skills. Soft skills are important too. Okay, so we're going to pass this out. And just take a second to glance through it. And the way that this quadrant works is women rated the effectiveness low versus high, men low versus high, and then we boxed them together to see what is base. We have baseline, we have overrated measures, we have proven measures, and hidden gems. So take a glance through that. Show of hands, how many glancing through this list at their organization and organization that you've been at have had one or more of these measures? Okay. How many have had none? Well, those hands numbers didn't make any sense. You're all still reading. It's fine. Keep reading. What reactions do you have reading this, or what thoughts?
Say something?
Yes, please.
I love this workshop, by the way. My favorite and overrated measures is holding one-time only training sessions. As a consultant, Cecilia and I are often called on to come into organizations and do a check-the-box training, is what we call it. At the end of the training, people come up to us and tell us, this place is horrible! You know, get us out of here! Help! Send help quick! Right? So it's like we walk away feeling like we didn't do a great job of helping that organization. So, and I've worked at organizations where I've attended those one-time only training sessions, and they're not very impactful.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And it is of all of these, it's the number one go-to. It's the thing we get calls on. It's the number one go-to. For example, anyone seen in the news what's happening with Starbucks? Right? It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's not a bad thing, but we solved that problem. Checked that box by shutting down our stores for 2 hours. We're good. It's that mentality, yeah.
You won't utilize it in the organization. And so if a problem comes up again, let's go back to the training because we never utilized what we learned in the first place.
Yes. Absolutely. Doesn't stick. Yeah.
I am 23 and I own that. I'm not gonna
Hey, there you go.
But I do work in an elementary school, and the discipline measures are kind of playing into how kids are usually dealt with in our society.
Mm.
So positive reinforcement, obviously, is generally the way that we kind of try to stay on. I feel like that, being that adults aren't far from children all the time, those discipline measures usually come with, like, you did this wrong. This is what you have to go through because of it, without kind of reinforcing how to not go there again. I feel like that is like an oversight kind of a thing, where like people don't want to spend time on how to further keep that from happening. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this again because I don't get paid, as opposed to this is a decent thing as a decent human being I should be implementing on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's a great, and it's sort of, you can kind of overlay that over a lot of things. We sort of, the outcome, we're obsessed with the outcome versus sort of why things are happening. And the second we start to switch that lens and think about why I thought this way, acted this way, did this thing, why my company thought this way, acted this way, did this thing, it starts to really change from, let's close the stores for 2 hours. And again, it's not a bad thing. But anything else stand out?
It's really hard to make sustainable change, so those proven measures, without power. So if you are trying to do a grassroots initiative, which a lot of times that's how it starts, with folks, at the bottom of the organization trying to, prove that there's a business case for this, a lot of times there's just not enough power or influence to be able to make those things happen.
Yep. Absolutely. It goes back to the women, you should fix it. Women of color, you should fix it. In order to do that, it's about power. we're going to spend a little bit of time now with our remaining time figuring out, so this is meaningful and it's real, but what do we do? It's overwhelming. What do we do? So we're going to challenge you to pick a thing. We want you to think about your organizations, have a discussion at your table about the macro trends or challenges that you see at your company. You know, are you losing a ton of women at a certain point? Does your leadership team look a certain way? What are the macro challenges that you are having? Pick one or two issues that you feel are the most important and or fixable. Now, to be clear, it's not a check the box fix. It's what issues can be addressed. What issues might get money? What issues might get buy-in? And then you can use this chart if it's helpful. If you come up with something else, that's totally great too. What are one or two ideas of what might actually address the problem that are tactical? We want to get tactical. Something that can happen that you can maybe do, or you can have a conversation with somebody else who might be able to do it. Okay? Talk amongst yourselves, jot some ideas, take a couple of minutes.
brought it all together for us. The thinking and the things that we talked about earlier really come together in this workshop. So, oh man, I'm so happy.
I mean, I'm convinced that the two of us and the two of you, we're going to change the world.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
we can do it together.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Great job.
Okay, take one more minute. All right, come on back. I know you're mid-conversations. I want you to take this sort of energy and momentum and whatever's in your head and make it stick, because it's not something you may have been able to come up with and solve in this moment. Did anyone come up with any really good ideas about what they might do or any really clear issues that they see and able to define? Yeah.
Microphones make me nervous. We just talked about how leave has become a big thing, which is great, right? So family, medical leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. But the problem is the opposite side of the system hasn't caught up. So then a lot of the times organizations don't have the support to cover those roles. Or I think I was making a joke in a meeting the other day. I was like, is there temps, like social work temps in the world? Because I used to work in corporate America back in the day too. We had temps that would come in and fill the role, but I've never seen that within, the behavioral health field. And how are we kind of fulfilling those gaps? Because I've been on both sides where it's hard for me to support people when they come back from leave because I'm burnt out because I've been covering the role for 3-4 months. And so I'm like, I need you to do your job, but that's not supportive and that's not going to be helpful. And then, we lose people because they're overwhelmed. And so the system just hasn't quite balanced out.
It's a great point that giving more leave comes with consequences, right? We want to give more leave, but how do we make sure that the company can survive, especially small businesses? How can we make sure that the company not only survives, but the employees thrive? And then when the woman comes back, or heaven forbid, a man comes back from leave, How do we support that person so it's not all of a sudden like, oh, thank God you're here. Here's your entire workload. Oh, I'm sorry. Did your life change? Can you no longer, right? How do we do that? And what we would say is get really tactical. If that's the issue, pick one point in that journey. It's getting a system in place for maternity leave fill. Maybe that's it. And you don't have the answers, but that is your single focus and your single goal. Figure out mat leave fill, family leave fill. There are solutions. There are some answers. They're not easy. They're expensive, but there are answers. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I want to leave you with, I want you all to sort of think about these and stick these in your heads and try to get really specific. We love having these conversations. What we would encourage you to do is to sort of trail that thought to the very end when you come up with an action. Bite-sized action. We cannot do it all. But we cannot do it all. If anyone needs a book to read, read a book called Drop the Ball by Tiffany Dufu. It's why I'm not mad that I'm not wearing my shoes. Sometimes balls drop. So you can't do it all, but you can do something. So pick a thing. Get focus, get clarity. Now, a couple of thoughts to leave you with really quickly. This is one of our favorites. This is from the BCG study. They asked, when do gender diversity initiatives work? When there's a man involved, 96% of the time. When there's no men involved, 30% reported progress. We can't fix it alone. We shouldn't fix it alone. So, what do you do? Turns out our Gender Diversity Initiative workshop is all about finding a man. We want you to pick one, maybe two. Really tactical, specific issue that you want to tackle. We want you to find a man who you can work with on this, get him involved, have the conversation, educate him. We want you to go, try it, do it, iterate. It's not going to work at first. Maybe it'll work the second time. And if you can prove success, guess what you get? A chance to do another thing. Or somebody else raises their hand. Or more money comes. But we can't do it all. You got to start somewhere. So go forth and conquer. And thank you very much for your time.
Let's give her a round of applause. Awesome. That was truly illuminating. Wow. I'm taking notes. Like, this is good stuff. And it just goes to show you, too, like, when even if your area is diversity and inclusion, you always have so much more to learn, right? So hopefully you've learned a lot. You've drunk a lot in. I just want to take you back in remembering that we were looking at things from 3 different views. The interaction, right? The systemic, and the worldview. And I think our speakers did a great job at helping us look at things with that lens. I love that you said pick one man. I'm going to pick one man right now. The CEO of Washburn. He's been at the center, at the core of driving a lot of the diversity and inclusion work, along with Pearl Dobbins, who kicked us off this morning. So it's only right that we have Tom close it off. Give him a round of applause.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody. My name is Tom Steinmetz. I mentioned before I'm also a dad. But for today especially, I'm also a huge Stanton Adams groupie. And it was fun looking around the audience and seeing there's a bunch of people I'm looking around and saying, I think this is my 6th Stanton Adams workshop. So seeing a bunch of familiar faces, but also a lot of new faces here as well. I always walk away from these sessions feeling re-energized and motivated. So my 2 thank yous for today is I want to first say a huge thank you to Cecilia and Melissa and the whole Stanton Adams team and all the presenters from today. Can we give everybody And then my second thank you is for the Washburn Center for Children team who helped make today happen as well and who've been really active and keep showing up for our equity and diversity initiatives. So Pearl over here, I see Rachel right in the front row, Kate, Rachel, Kauru, and Amy in the back.
there's a lot going on here, and everybody is finding their own way to be involved and contributed. So can we also give them a huge thank you as well? The last thing I want to do is extend an invitation as well. Tomorrow even, there is another incredible training. Another organization we've worked with over the years is Kente Circle, and they're hosting a training with Resmaa Menakem on shifting the burden of white supremacy. If you haven't attended any of their workshops, I would encourage you to reach out and find more out about that. I think they're doing extraordinary work in this area. Here, this is the second in our Equity and Access series this year, so please take a look and come back and join us for that again. We're also hosting a whole series of free community dialogues about children's mental health, and the next speaker in that series is Dr. Bill Allen, who's an amazing trainer, consultant, author, has worked at Washburn and with Washburn for a long time. Please take a look and find that out, and then just keep coming back and keep showing up. So thank you, everyone.
A couple of final thoughts. Don't put this on the shelf, right? Think about what it is that you can do when you go back to your organizations, your homes, your community. What can you do to impact the larger society? It's not going to happen on its own. It's really our responsibility to take this initiative forward. If you're curious about maybe some things to do, stay after and talk to Sarah and Megan. They can talk to you about some of the things that they're working on with other organizations, and would be happy to talk to you about your organization. Also, Celicia talked about the MDI, Minnesota Debate Institute. They will be running again this August, and they're always looking for judges. You don't need any experience. I know I had no experience, and I showed up and I had a wonderful time. Both Sarah and Megan did as well. So please, if you're interested, she's got cards, or you can give her your card as well. Thank you so much for coming today, and we hope to see you at Sustainable Communities on July 19th. Thank you.